Are you ready? Sir, my sources tell me that you can do 40 push-ups. Are my sources true or no?
True and false.
Why true and false?
Depends on the time of the day and time of the week.
What's your routine?
So usually routine is pretty much on a regular basis. Now that I have a 16-month-old little kid.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Routine is pretty much coming to work every day early in the morning. So I like to get started early of the day. And I like to get into work early in the day so that I get to sort of, have a lead up on the day right in the morning. And then also I get some time in the evening to do whatever I want apart from everything else. So, and then traveling takes away a lot of my time in Mumbai, in a city like Mumbai. Getting home, what I do is I straight hit the gym almost 3 times a week from about 6:30 p.m. And I'm there for about an hour, and then about 2 times I get to do yoga if I can. So this is a regular routine, and then I kind of head straight to pick up my son, get home, and then dinner, and then that's the end of the day. So pretty much packed with workout, and doing errands. So pretty much
being a parent, how difficult is it to maintain a good work-life balance?
Oh, I think so. Being a parent or not being a parent, there's always this thing about responsibility, right? So work-life balance, if we talk about that, it's kind of very subjective to very different kind of people and personalities. I think we talk about work-life integration in terms of, because we have access to work and access to everything else almost every time of the day, right? It's also very important to understand it's not about how much time you give in. It's all about when, where, and how successfully you're able to do your work. So I think I don't find it as a barrier. I think it's a state of mind where you kind of, more than balance, you integrate things into your personal and work life and do it together.
So you would say you have a good work-life balance?
So far, yes, so good. I've had a very, very intense, work schedule. In the past, I started off my career with a very, very intense work schedule. So I've tried different forms, and I think every day is a new day, and every day is kind of finding a new balance.
Where did you start your career? What was your first job?
All right, so straight out of college.
What college?
I went to Christ University in Bangalore.
Okay.
Yes. Straight out of college, you're as young as you guys are, about 18, 19. You're just kind of figuring out what is to be done.
Mm-hmm.
You apply for various jobs. You apply to universities. You want to do your postgraduate degrees, master's degrees. So you prepare for that, for CAT, ZAT, whatever it takes. And in the meanwhile, also what was happening is we did have a lot of placement companies coming in, right? So that's when I interviewed for a couple of companies, and I got through EY, Ernst & Young, as my first job. So I think that was just fresh out of college. I think literally the last day of exam, and you kind of started off with what you call the so-called career, right? You go into about 6 months of training there. We did that. But I was working in hedge fund taxes. So you're in finance.
Mm-hmm.
You've just come out of college. The learning curve is very steep.
Okay.
So when I look back now, I think just kind of, connecting the dots, it's not about the money as such, but it's more about the experience and the learning overall, right? So like I said, steep learning curve. So doing finance, hedge fund taxes, you're kind of working with multiple engagements, teams, different time zones. People are in the US, people in Europe. I think a work day would stretch anywhere between 17 to 18 hours.
Oh, damn.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had a season back then, about 10 months of a season.
What year is this?
This is back in 2011, 2012 is what I'm talking about. So I think it was more of a steep learning curve. Yes, you're pretty young back then, and you do sort of complain about, how working hours are so long, and then you don't get to do things that you used to, because when you're in college, or let's put it this way, till the time you don't hit the market, till the time you're not still responsible for yourself, or maybe somewhat just in college, you're still kind of having a nice time, right? You are studying, you're doing things, but then that internship doesn't suffice for that, right? So that started, I think 6 months in, you're like in full throttle, you're doing multiple things, you're doing multiple projects, you're handling clients, your communication skills are kind of suddenly developed overnight. You're talking to different people from different cultures. That's another experience that you get. I think those long hours were just meant to be, and I think what it taught us as in the batch of people that we went through, is I think resilience to a larger extent, because you kind of go through the drill, you go through the grind, you learn a lot, you climb up the ladder, and then you kind of set a new path for yourself, saying that, okay, what's next?
At this point of your life, can you say that the whatever grinding you did back then, was it worth it?
Definitely yes, because I wouldn't have wanted it any other way if I think about it right now, because I think if I hadn't hustled in the correct term that I'm using, back then I would have really kind of craved for it today. And we still crave for a lot of, kind of purposeful work today, because I think that's what a Gen Z / a millennial professional is all about, right? So I'm kind of linking in the balance over here, is because it's not about the amount of time that you put in, but it's about the purposeful work that you do, right? And this first off freshers, the job that you get, like we always used to, I had mentors who would tell me that when you're looking for your first job as a fresher, you need to cast a very wide net. What that means is, when you cast a very wide net, as fishing, when you go fishing, you don't know what is under the water. And when you cast a very wide net, you get all the fish in the net. And then you can kind of handpick, cherry pick and learn from that, right? So that's what the first job does to you, right? Your first thing first is you get into a disciplined routine. Because when you're in college, you're doing things, you're in, erratic schedules of work, study, going to college, coming back, you want to play something, you are into sports, you're doing extracurricular, you're doing everything, right? When you start working, you're trying to figure out, okay, now I really like to, let's say, play badminton. How do I take out time to play badminton, right? Or let's say, I want to play a game of golf. How do I do that, right? So you're figuring out stuff, you're doing things, but your priorities have changed. And your priority is your work. And that's your work day, because you're not only earning the salary, but you're also learning and you're getting that experience. It's that return on your time that you're getting is the experience that you're getting, right? So I think all of these things really matter. So discipline, routine, knowing what it means to hustle, right? Really knowing what goes into a work day, all of those things. And when you do long hours in the beginning, and also you can do longer hours in the beginning. I don't think there's a golden rule or a golden number to say that you should be working a specific number of hours. Yes, labor laws or whatever say that 8 hours, right? So I don't know where that 8 number has come. But this is my personal take. I think I'm a kind of a person who, once I wake up in the morning, I'm a go person, right? So I like to keep doing things through the day, and once I'm done with the day, and when I hit the sack, I'm done. So I'm not one of those person who's like, okay, we'll take a break, we'll think about something and get back later, right? So that's subjective again. That's a personal opinion that I'm giving, right? But again, it's integrated. It's about prioritizing. I think priority is very important, and especially when you ask me about parenting, right? So your priorities, your responsibilities change. There are so many different responsibilities. Also, it's a cultural mindset, right? So we come from a country like India. Our family bonding is very strong. You do want to give some time to your parents. You do want to give some time to your family, to your kids. So I think everyone is not only working in a balance, but working in confluence. Like it's like a symphony playing together, right? So everyone is coming together, doing things. And I think it's just working out well. And of course, there's a little bit of negotiation here or there, which is always kind of can be handled.
You look like someone who has always gotten straight A's since the start, who has always been hustling. Has it always been like that?
Not actually. I have not been a straight A until about grade 10. So let's put it that way. So until grade 10. So, okay. So I changed about 8 schools. I'm not I'm not a person who's grown up
Are you a violent person?
I'm not violent. I'm adventurous, right? So I grew up in multiple cities across India. My dad happens to be a metallurgical engineer. He's been working at various different companies. I think during his prime career days, we would move around cities. So I grew up. So I was born in Jamshedpur. I was 6 months old when I came to Mumbai for the first time. I don't remember anything about Mumbai, so please don't ask me anything. Back then, I was not in my senses. So is my son right now. He's not in his senses. I think from Mumbai, then we went to Bangalore. That's where I started my official grade 1, education. Bangalore, and then I was off to Calcutta. I was in Calcutta for about 5 years, and then back in Jamshedpur for some reason. I planned again to move out of Jamshedpur and went to Delhi. I went to a boarding school in grade 11 and 12th. So that was pretty interesting. All this while I was moving around, I was doing multiple things. I was never a very studious person, I would say, but I did like doing what I like doing. Like, let's put it that way. So if I enjoyed something, I would do it. If I
do it with full passion.
Yeah. So I think grade 11 is when it hit me harder, I would say, because I was in a very different environment then. I was all by myself. I'm living with, my batchmates, my dorm mates, the other boarders who had left their families, come from different parts of the world, the city, the country, wherever. I still remember our first dormitory was about 8 students together, 8 beds together. So, boarding is another topic altogether. We can go on and on. But so I went there, and then I think that's when I really started scoring really well. And I thought I was kind of addicted to grades, in a way. Let's talk about it in a way that it's not just about getting the marks, but I was addicted to doing something and seeing like instant results out of it. So I used to put in a lot of hard work in studying back then. So grade 11, 12, throughout my undergrad, I kind of wanted to always be a topper. And it was a complete opposite of what I was until grade 10. I don't know why and I don't know how.
You got your shit together in grade 11.
Yes. So it was something like that, okay? Of course, what boarding does is fabulous, right? It puts you onto track. It puts a lot of different things into perspective, right? There was different experiences that I had over there. It was equal contribution to sports, equal contribution to. So I love debating. I used to debate a lot. We used to go at a national level debating. We used to do. So that's where I built a lot of confidence as well. I mean, the reason I'm able to stand and talk to a large number of students over the last few years, I think a large part of it is attributed to the fact that I started debating at an early stage, right? So just training by that sense, it was known as the hot seat, we would just stand up. And during our debating times, I still recall we had the self-study room in the evenings from 6 p.m. to about 8 p.m. where we had a 2-hour self-study. And we'll be studying in a silent room, and my, warden would come in and he would just say, Aditya, in the middle, and start speaking. And then what do you do? And in a boarding, you just say, yes, sir, that's it. There's no two ways about it, right? And then you don't have your script, you don't have anything, maybe. If you don't, then you rush in, you get your script, you start reading. So we were trained really hard. We went through a lot of rigorous training in debating, and I still remember my first national level where about 2,000 students. My judge, if I recall, one of the judge was one of the chief editors of TOI. And then there were 2 more people, there were principals, and everyone's there. And then, you go for and against, right? So you're just standing there, 2,000 people, the flashlight is on you, and you're like, you have to speak. But I think what worked out well over there is there's nothing that can beat practice. So the more you practice, that gives you confidence and you can speak. So putting all of that together, yes, boarding was a great, kind of a life. I did horse riding. I would play basketball. I would study. I was very conscious about my grades. So I would really study back then. So grade 12, same thing. I got through Christ University. So I went to Christ. Again, throughout college, first 3 years, I think I was like always sitting in the first rows. But all the best friends that I had were from the last rows. So it was... And all those friends have still remained. Like literally, I met them last week. We keep catching up, and those friends will always remain forever, right? So they're from either from boarding or from college, who are still in touch. Over 10 years, 15 years. I think that's been a perfect mix. So somewhere in my head, I still want to sit at the back, but somewhere in my intent, I want to be in the front. So I don't know what it is. It's very difficult for me to give you a perfect mix, but that's been my story so far.
So basically, you were a smart grinding backbencher.
Well, SGB, so I don't know how does that sound, but yeah, I became very serious in terms of I wanted to have fun also. I did have fun in college, but I would not sacrifice my study time, let's put it that way. So for me, I was very focused. I kind of knew what I wanted. I prioritized. And more than what I wanted, I knew what I did not want to do in a way. So, that helped me. Which people I want to hang out with, which group I want to be with. I kind of also naturally attracted some people around me that I want to be with. So, and I've always been a very, I would say, stubborn child, right? As childhood says. So I think people would tell me if he wants something, he really meant it. So he would just do that. So I think if I wanted something, I wanted it. That's it. And it's still been the same way.
Is public speaking a natural talent you possess, or is that a skill that you developed over the years?
So I think I've been a mix of both. And the reason being, it's very weird if you put me to self-analyze myself. If you happen to see me in a public gathering, or networking sessions and all that, I'm not an introvert, but I'm not so much of an extra vibrant extrovert, right? So
somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So I can have a decent conversation maybe on a flight as well. I can have a decent conversation with people who I kind of, get to know. So initially, if I don't know you, I don't think I'll be speaking much to you. Or if I get to know you, yes, there's a lot I can talk about. And there's a lot of, if you drive me through a sensible journey where what you want to extract, that's when I can talk a lot more about.
That will depend on the person and the topic as well. If there's some topic that you're interested in, you will go on to speak more. Whereas if a person of not the same caliber as you is speaking on that same topic, the conversation wouldn't be of a level you would expect.
So here's a funny story, right? So in our family, what happens in family gathering is when there's a speech to be given or when someone has to speak, they're like, Aditya, why don't you come and do it, right? And it's very natural, right? I'm like, no, why should I do it? Because you do that every day. And that's the thing. I mean, while we do it every day, inside the class, this is my space. I like doing it here, right? But to be honest, if you put me in front of an unknown crowd and you tell me to MC over there, which is scripted, I mean, I don't have that kind of a fear, but there is a mental block that I don't want to be doing. I don't enjoy doing it as much. It's a confession, but if you tell me to walk in and speak, maybe with the same crowd, I will.
There's always this fear of being judged as well.
I don't care. I have been a very bindas kind of a person. I love myself, and I say to a lot of different people also that I think even as students, a lot of mental health issues that are leading to this is that you need to understand and you need to, accept the fact that you're not here to be loved by all. There will be people who will dislike you, and that's fair. I mean, you as a person, you might not like all the 5 of us over here, right? Or in your classmates or whoever. And that's fair. That's what human tendency is. So I think getting away from the notion and stepping up, right? You need to step up and do what you want to do. Do the right thing in the right set of mind, the right conscious. As long as the intent and the purpose is right, then you do it. It's that confidence that you have in yourself. But being judged, even if I do something or if I think being judged is like a fear, right? So the fear, what is a fear? Fear and judgment and anxiety and stress is an equation. It's a mathematical equation, right? It's the equation very, very easy. So you have an expectation and there's reality.
Right.
So expectation minus reality is stress. So you see, what do you want to do? So what it is be real. I'm here. This is my expectation. That's a zero gap. There's no stress.
So you have a you do you and let me do me mentality.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do you. What I'm trying to say is that you don't interfere in my thing. I don't interfere so, live on your own terms is what I'm trying to say.
Can we talk about your time in Australia?
Of course, that's another phase. So if we go phase wise, I think the first phase, because, if I have to get to that phase, I need to give you a little bit of a background. So it's very interesting. I've never lived in a city for more than 5 years, right?
Not even Mumbai.
So Mumbai is the first city where I've lived for 6 years.
That is a victory for Mumbai.
Right. So thank you very much. But yeah, so what has happened is, I think schooling for me has been a very, it's been very fast moving. It was like it just came and went. So I was out of school as a little kid, not knowing nothing, to suddenly knowing some things and still learning whatever I can, right? So the first phase has been that travel, be with parents. The second phase started when I actually left home. So leaving home was a very big move, and leaving home way early in life. So like today, I keep telling my mom when I talk to her every day. So I tell her that, it's been, I think, more the number of years I've been outside home than the number of years I've been home. Right? So I've been home till 16 or 17. And then I think if you double that, it's been literally a little more than that I've been out of home. And so leaving home was my second phase, the start of the second phase, right? And when I left home, being independent, doing my own thing, going to a boarding school, going to college, working, getting my first job on my own, earning my own money, going to Australia to study. So that is, this whole thing encapsulates into that second phase. And the third phase has been this kind of sense of, stabilizing some things. I still believe in instability, but some people say life stable hona chahiye. I don't believe in that, right? So I think the second phase was that, right? Adventure, always kind of moving around, doing things. People used to tell me you have wheels, right? So you're always moving, you're on the go, you're doing things, right? And then the third phase is basically post-marriage, right? So post-marriage, and now, of course, I have a little 16-year-old kid. That is the third phase, which is what is going on. So Australia was a great move, right? So I decided, like any other person, that I want to do a master's. And then I started, I would talk to my parents that what should I do? And I was never so ambitious that I want to do an Ivy League. And also, I think there are two things. एक तो बोलते हैं ना कि अपने टाइम में ऐसा होता था. Like, I can't say that. I mean, it is not far off, right? It is just about, let's say, 12, 13 years ago. And also the other thing was the amount of guidance and mentorship you receive by the set of people you have. So I've always, and I heard this quote by Franklin Roosevelt once long ago, it says, do whatever you can from wherever you are with whatever you have, right? So don't wait for it to come to you. And the set of mentors and the guides that you have, you just kind of keep talking and you come to that point that, okay, let's make a move, right? So I was not so ambitious कि Ivy League में ही जाना है, top 10 में जाना है. I didn't know how would, I see kids these days, they're all preparing for competitive exams and preparing for GMATs and GREs and all that. And I remember sitting and I was never formally preparing for anything, but I would look at CAT papers, GMAT papers. I just want to know, पूछते क्या हो इसमें, you know. I mean, if I have friends who are till grade 10 and if they hear me saying this, they'll be like, he's lying, right? So because they know me very differently. But I became very kind of, not nerdy, I was a little geeky. You know, I was a troublemaking geeky. I wanted to know things. Every time I wanted to know something. So that's when I started preparing and I'm like, no, this has to happen. And I was looking at various options and I said, at least it has to be a top 50, if not anything else, right? So I listed down universities and then I said, which countries? So I didn't want to, at that stage, I didn't want to go to US. Also, we were budgeting a lot of different things, right? So finances were a constraint back then. So we were looking at US, we were looking at some parts of Europe, and I was looking at Australia. Then I was speaking to a lot of people, and Australia stood out because I did get universities that stood in the top 50. I wanted economics. That was a, straight.
Has economics always been a thing for you since your school days?
I am not sure. I was good in economics in college for sure. I fared pretty well in economics in school as well. And I don't know why did I choose economics. And now I think about it because I used to collect a lot of coins and currencies back when I was a kid. So I think it was just kind of resonating with that. Also, I happen to be, so I have family members so my dad's side, they're all engineers, right? And my mom is also a sciencey. And then I have on my mother's side, there's all a mixed bunch of people. So I was literally the first person from the family to choose a commerce kind of a background and move on, right? And those days I can say now also is engineering and, being a doctor was the two important things, right? And if you're coming from an engineering background, I know all my cousins and if they get to hear this, I don't know, but yeah. All the cousins, they chose engineering because everyone else was doing engineering in the family. And of course, their parents were engineers.
Safe option
or whatever. But I was a kind of a person who, like I said, if I like doing something, I'll do it. Otherwise, there's no point doing it, right? So I think economics became a choice is when I actually started looking for options to do a master's. So I was very conscious and saying that I didn't want to do an MBA also. I wanted a 2 years full-time master's in a specific discipline, and that had to be economics. So I chose that. I think, so 2 years full-time, it was an advanced program. This is University of Queensland up in Brisbane. So I went in about 2013. 2015 is when I graduated. 2017 is when I moved back. So I stayed in Australia for about 4 years. I worked there after finishing.
If I'm not wrong.
Yes. So I worked there for about a year. And there was an interim period in between where I was already teaching. Just the last semester of my master's degree is where I started teaching. I continued to teach till I got that job. And then I did that job for about a year, a little more than a year. And then I moved back to India.
What is the difference between the typical Australian lifestyle and typical Indian lifestyle?
So it's the same as saying, the westernized world or a better lifestyle, if you may put it. But again, India is moving at a pace where we are also kind of getting there. So very simple, right? So I grew up in multiple cities. I grew up in a household where routine was important. So I felt like that's why I found boarding a little easy, because my dad was very much regimented about you have to do this, this and this. You cannot sleep during this time. You have to study during this time to this time. He was very much about discipline more than the grades. Like, if I say I will study at this time, but he wouldn't ask me how much did you score. So lifestyle-wise, because I had that kind of a background, what happens is lifestyle is all about your choices and the hobbies that you have. Now, I always tell this is that one should have hobbies. You should be doing something, even if it's like 10 minutes a day, but do it every day. It's just a part of your personality, and it makes you you. That's what you are. And I had multiple things. I used to do multiple things. So I think Australia, in that sense, for me, worked out really well because Australia is known for its outdoors. It's known for adventure. But also at the same time, if you happen to be in Melbourne, you get to know art and culture as well. Right. So I used to do a lot of photography back then. I literally one day thought that, I want to become a professional photographer. I wanted to go and study photography to that extent. I still have my first camera with me. I have my dad's camera as well. Right. So these are hobbies that I picked up. They nurtured well during that time. I would spend time learning, self-learning, experimenting. I would reach out to people to teach me. I would do workshops, means I would go and attend workshops. I learned how to work in a dark room, although I don't do it professionally, but yes, I have got access to that. Also, as a kid, I was lots more into sports. So I would play a lot of badminton. I got into, long distance running. Australia gave me that freedom to kind of explore a lot more. So I got into rock climbing. I'd never done rock climbing before. I got into it. I learned it. I kind of experimented, did a lot more adventure there. So that is and also, of course, when you talk about, you're in a very different environment, right? So when you see others doing it, you're also kind of motivated to do it. So the entire country, if you live in a major urban setup like Brisbane, Sydney, or Melbourne, you're used to these people around you, right? People are always active, they're working out, they're doing things, they're going hiking. You also get involved in all of that, right? And especially when you go for the first time, you're going for masters, right? So you also have to balance that, because when we did a master's, we did not have that much of time to spare and do multiple things, right? There was always assignments. There was a lot of study to be done. Self-study was the main focus. So I think when I started working, lifestyle over there meant that, okay, you get some time out of your day to do something else that you also like doing. So fitness became one thing, just kind of exploring art and culture. I think I've explored a lot of different form of art and culture through music because of my wife, because she's a musician. So I think that's become a perfect blend. We call this a household of, the left brain and the right brain. Right. So I get to get very analytical. My wife gets to get
creative
really
and quantitative.
Yeah.
Both.
So I don't know what this little one is going to become, but, I'm sure he has a mix of the two sides. So I would put it in that, unless you want me to say something specific about Australia, I'm not sure. But yeah.
How serious were you for opting photography as a career?
I was 100 on 100. I was like, this is what I want to do. And, that's when you need the right people at the right time. Today also, given a chance, if I had to do a professional degree in photography, I would. I follow some of the greatest legends in photography, and I still kind of, look at the kind of work they're doing. I think I was, I had gone to Kunur. If you know where Kunur is, this is just after Ooty. And you have to go into the Nilgiris for that. This is down south. And I'd taken my parents there. So we were just coming down the foothills, and you come out of the Nilgiris, and this is one of the best photography institutes in India and across the world, very well known also. It's in the foothills of Nilgiris. And I just told my dad, listen, why don't we just go check that out? And that's when he said that this is what direction is, right? Either you take a left, you go there, you go straight. And he said, just keep driving straight. So that's when, I didn't opt to do it, but I still continue to click pictures here and there. And I think photography has got nothing to do. Of course, it has got to do with the equipment and everything that you carry, but it's more about the art side of it, right? So it's about how you compose pictures, how you look at the world with a different perspective.
How did you go from there to teaching?
So very interesting story. I was in my last semester of my master's, and my flatmate, we were together for 2 years. So in the last semester, what happened was he started teaching on the side, so for pocket money. And I'm not sure if he was very fond of teaching or something, but he wanted to do something, right? So he got onto this. He got this one student who he would go to the library and teach. He would tutor. So we would normally do a 2-hour session, right? And in the last semester is when we were looking for jobs across the globe, in Australia, everywhere. And he already got a job back then in India. So he had to come back and he couldn't just leave the student like that, right? So he just asked me randomly in a very, random conversation, can you teach? Would you like to teach? And I'm like, I don't think so, but I can try. He's like, I don't want to leave him hanging because I'm going, so I need someone. So he says, you're the best person here because I know you're in the same batch. So I said, fair enough, I'll try, I'll give it a shot. So the student was willing to move on to me and he came on to me and I started teaching him. And I don't know, I think it was a word of mouth that from 1 it became 2 and then 4 and 6 and 8 and then it kept on going, right? The other thing was I could formally teach at the university through a professor, but then I would be restricted to only one subject, which I didn't want to do. And I was very fond of just, problem solving, because in masters what happens is you're tutoring and then you're also solving different kind of problems, right? What happens when you do it formally, which is also great on your portfolio, is you get to work with the professor, which is great. Second, you do a lot of other admin work. So you make questions, you solve questions, you mark the students and all that. So I got into purely sort of tutoring. And then I'm like, wow, I think I should do this. I should get into academia because I like the research part of it. While this was happening, I got my first job in Australia and Kargil back then. And that's when I had to take a call to stop teaching because I couldn't handle both. So I still had one student I remember who had written back to me and she wanted to do some weekend classes over Zoom, or that time I think whatever, video conferencing we had. So we would do that once in a while. And some other students from various universities, Monash, University of Melbourne, my own university. So we would get in touch and I would keep on doing that. So I worked for Kargil for a year. And when I moved back to India, I was like, I think academia is good. So let's get into that. So that's how I started teaching.
You started in India teaching with ISME directly?
Yes. So I came back. I moved back in 2017, almost mid-2017, later half of the year. I was also getting married in 2017. So after getting married, just about November, December, and then I started teaching at ISME by 2018, Feb. And I've been with ISME since then.
Is there a specific skills you think that students should have at this age?
So very important, right? According to me, one skill at this age, at your age, that you should definitely develop is how to kind of think creatively, which is creativity in the larger sense, and critical thinking, which is very important, right? So critical thinking is one skill which I think every student should pick up, right? And when I say critical thinking, I really mean it. It's something that is will take you miles and miles ahead, and it kind of blends very well with everything that you do. I think the second skill, according to me, is agility. Means also learning agility, being able to stop and say that I don't know something, or unlearn some things and relearn something. So agility is very important. Third, which is again bracketed into a super skill, would be storytelling, right? So your ability to formulate stories and sell a very compelling story to people is a very undermined skill, but it is one of the most important skills.
That is something you have capitalized on?
Well, see, critical thinking comes with economics, right? So when you are dealing with a subject like economics and pol sciences and stats, you kind of always are thinking critically, right? So that is one. Storytelling, I must confess, I'm not so good at, but I still feel that's something which really helps. And you might have seen that with different professors. I think you remember most of it because that professor told you a story.
Yes.
Right? To explain a concept. So I don't know. I try to do it through my examples in explaining a concept, so that becomes storytelling. But these three things, I think, will take you that next mile. And these three skills are not something that will phase out in the near or the later future also. No, so let's put it this way, right? Whenever we teach, our touch base of students is too much, right? So we are touching about 730 students in 1 week, if you're talking only about first years, right? And when we have been teaching over the years, we have this kind of a experience and perception about multiple students and multiple batches, because we as faculty members are involved in the end-to-end curation, right? So let me make this clear, is that for no faculty it would ever be a hate word, right, for any student or a batch, because that's our job, right? For us, the job is that see, if you were all in order and if everything is in order, then we don't need to do any work. You do everything in the correct sense. You get your grades, you evaluate, you pass, you are what you are. I think our work begins only where we find those gaps, right? I would say challenging is the word, right? So there are different kind of batches, and I think this is one of the batch, also the batch size. And when you have a larger batch size and you're dealing with a very, very diverse group of students, right? And also what I have kind of researched and figured over here is that it's not actually the students who are in simplicity at fault, right? Your batch of students have gone through a very, very different time,
COVID batch,
in their high school, because by the time you were actually going to get serious with academics and doing your 12th grade board exams and then going through college and all of that, I think you went through a whole of COVID during your 10th, 11th and 12th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Right? So those are primary. Those are
primary years where you will develop.
Your intellectual ability to grasp a lot of things starts during that time, 16 to 18. Your mind is like a sponge. It is like absorbing, it is squeezing, it is absorbing, it is squeezing. You want to do multiple things. You're also peaking your, co-curricular activities in school. You have the last 2 years to go. You want to play into school, under 19. There are a lot of things that can be done in that age group. And what has happened is, unfortunately, and I'm talking from an academic standpoint, and also from a coaching, mentoring standpoint, is I feel that your batch, unfortunately, did not get the chance to live it up in entirety, right? So you did not go through the whole process in the fullest way it should have been done as compared to the other batches.
So it's showing now.
And that reflects over here, and that's a challenge. There are a few students, of course, who need a little more help and support in terms of, where they come from and what they've gone through. And see, every individual is different. 730 of you are different, right? Each person has a very different intellect, a very different temperament. And you're also dealing with different temperament of faculty members with so many courses being taught and everything. So I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity. And this opportunity, if I were to curate something, I would curate a special COVID program, which is not a similar BBA program, but it is much to do with, specially curated for people who went through this 3 years of COVID in school. So I think there's no dislike or hatred. There is just kind of a challenge, which I think, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone over here, is to understand the batch so well, because it has happened so soon that we also need some time to retrospect and go back in time and understand that, hey, what can be done, right? So I think challenges are like instant gratification. Your attention spans have decreased. To hold a 1 hour class, I think to pay attention for 1 hour has become a challenge, right? So And I agree with that. There's no point saying that I don't agree, I don't accept this, right? As compared to our time, we could sit in a 2-hour duration of a class non-stop without talking. We would be very focused, calm, and listen in. And so did our, parents and everyone else, right? I think there is this sense of, later. So procrastination has become a thing which needs to be broken down, right? And I think those are the little challenges, and this will require some more interactions with a few students as case studies to find out what is really the challenge over there in learning. So learning and teaching is a skill. Learning and teaching also has inherent skills within. And how we teach, how we approach a different section, how do we approach a different student. So if I'm teaching 11 different sections, I think my approach has been very, very unique to each section, right? It changes with each and every division. While there are a few divisions that I could club together and say, okay, this is one category that can be taught in a similar manner, right? So I think that is what I look at it as. It's a challenge. The batch is not the challenge. The student is not the challenge. The challenge is the timing and what the students have gone through. That is what we mean to say by looking at this batch as a whole.
One last thing, what advice do you have for students of our age?
So it's, advice, I think there's a lot of scope to build resilience in you guys, right? And how does one build resilience? There's no golden formula to that. I think building resilience will come through focusing on something and seeing something end to end, right? So when you start something, you finish it. And once you finish it, it's very important to also having that capability to unlearn it, right? So analogy over here, let's say you plan to summit the Mount Everest. So you train for it, right? But tell me, do you only train to summit it, or do you also train and learn how to come back down? Right? That is one thing. And the second thing is this will build resilience. When you do an end-to-end sort of execution of something, that's resilience, right? In that sense, whatever you have to go through, there will be ups and downs. You can't always celebrate at the ups and be dismissed at the downs, right? You have to celebrate both. Actually, you have to celebrate more of the downs than the ups, right? That is one thing that needs to be built with this batch of students, or, with young students. Second thing is, I would say, I think there is somewhere students need to understand that, or more than understand, accept the fact that there is a lot to learn in this world. And not only from older people or from teachers or from professors, but from each other. So I learn a lot from my 16-month-old, right? So there's lots of learning there. So you can imagine what learning goes through, right? I'm learning in a way, how does the brain develop, right? I'm learning how does a human being start to talk. I'm learning how does a human being start to learn. For instance, my wife was teaching him a specific note to sing, and he's trying to sing that note, and he doesn't get it because he can hear himself, right? So he's frustrated. So he can't talk, right? He's a small infant, 16-year-old. Kya bolega? He goes hustle, and he's like baffled by the whole thing, and like, I need to do this. He makes another sound, and then he goes again, and then he goes again, and then he goes again. That thing is important, right? Learning from others. And when I say that, when you keep going again and again and again, that's also building more and more resilience, because you don't give up till the time you actually get it. And when you actually get it, it's not only about getting that one thing. It's about then being passionate about that thing forever. So I think that will only come with a lot more practice, being aware, accepting the fact. So we say this in mountaineering also, right? Actually, when you stand in front of that mountain that you want to summit, and you see yourself in front of that mountain, you see how small you are, right? And if I put it in neater words, I think that is where your ego comes in, right? Just redefining your ego once again, saying that ego is nothing. It has to fade away. It is all about accepting where you are, accepting what you can do. And I think do it in the right conscious mind with a correct purpose and intent. These are the things that I would definitely advise the people around here.
So, having been with you, like being in your lectures or whatever, your lectures are very unique, I would say, compared to other teachers. Like, there's a lot more to learn from, like, economics chhod ke bhi, there is something to learn from you, and that I appreciate a lot. So, thank you for doing this with us, sir. Really our pleasure.
Thank you very much. I think on that note, every teacher has their own unique style. For me, it's a personal choice where I like to connect personally because I think that is where learning happens. I think content is there. I think it's more about contextualization more than conceptualization. So I'm glad that it has helped you, and I do look forward in case there's any more help that you would need. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.